And thanks for jumping in, everyone. Really appreciate you joining. We're really excited to share some of our insights and learnings from the industry today. I'm Luke Johnson, and this is going to be From Chaos to Control. So we're going to talk about why cost control in construction is broken and what we can do about it, and how we go from, what the heck's going on in my project with these claims, where am I at, to it's under control and we've got a system and it's all working. If you do happen to join later, whatever, we'll record it and make sure that everybody gets the recording as well. We'll try and keep the attempted jokes to a minimum, but there may be some painful truths coming out. And if we get this right together, there'll be time for maybe some more golf or fishing by the end. So here's the plan. We're going to talk about, firstly, what's broken, why cost control is a mess. And then we're going to talk about how it could work with the right approach. We're going to talk about that core problem and what's causing it, how it can be fixed. And then finally, we'll show you some real examples towards the end. And maybe we'll just be reducing that admin chaos. Maybe we'll be de-risking your projects as we move through. So this is a reality, right? We all live this. Cost blowouts are normal. These are some real stats. 98% of mega projects go over budget. So that is huge. It's very common for projects to go over budget. And a very small fraction of projects actually finish inside of budget. And so if you're obviously not finishing your project in budget, what are you burning through? Your profits, your margin. And subcontractor packages make up a massive amount of our actual costs on a construction project. So there's a lot of risk embedded in those subcontracts and in the way we engage them and in the way that we manage them. And if they're not controlled properly, we are not just going to be missing the mark, we could be nowhere near the target on our project. And so maybe your current cost management system, in inverted commas, might feel something a little bit like this, depending how perhaps large your business is and what kind of work you do in construction. It may feel like you've got all these bits of information floating around, the costs, the budget, the claims, the timesheets, and it's very hard to pull it together. And this is just a common situation that we're hearing time and time and time again. It's not something that we're making up, and I'm sure it's something that you guys are feeling. Why does it happen? The pain starts with disconnected systems or lack of a system, right? There's so many point solutions in construction now. You can have a solution for doing your inductions, for managing your contractors. You can have a different one that perhaps manages the insurances. You could have a different system for doing bidding and tendering. Maybe you're doing it in Excel, a lot of these things. You could then be sending out quotes through some kind of procurement platform, or perhaps in Excel, or sending it via email. Then you may be storing things somewhere, maybe on a shared drive like Dropbox or SharePoint. Maybe you've got a document control system, and then none of that has really been to do with the real costs, which are to do with accounting, invoicing, and claims. And some of those are in just a package that are so distant from your project management team that there is a real lag time between the real project operational cost management and the accounting and the cash flow management. And that disconnect is a big problem. None of these systems are talking to anything else, right? So when you have questions and you're like, has that subby been inducted? Is that subcontractor pre-qualified? Do they have the insurance? What did they actually quote for this job? What's the contract value? What's the retention? Have they done claims? Have we paid the claims? Have we approved them? All those questions are constantly coming up day by day on a construction project. And, sometimes you feel like, oh, I've got 6 systems. I'm going to need a pack lunch, a compass. I'm going to need to get the fanciest stud finder, x-ray machine, just to get the answers that I really need to be able to manage the project. You might feel perhaps like your Friday afternoons are, quote, archaeology, where you're just digging through emails, trying to find the version of the contract that was real, or which email we sent that approved a variation. Like trying to find your keys in a toolbox full of spaghetti. It's messy and it's not very fun. And subcontractors are really a big blind spot, right? Because we mentioned so much of your contract value sits with your subcontractors, particularly if you're in that style of business where you're primarily doing project management, cost management, and you're doing mostly subcontracted work. You don't know who's put in a quote unless you're chasing them and trying to track it somewhere. You don't know what costs have been committed or approved until you go sit down with the accounts team and do a month-end session with them. Some of the variations could be sitting in Fred's inbox and he's gone on holiday for 2 weeks. And so we've lost visibility into that variation and it's going to catch us out later. You might not realize that you're 15, 20% over on a given subcontracted package until you're coming to the final accounting and really, you've just blown the budget. Studies show that 1 in 3 subby variations or subcontract variations are missed, undocumented, or disputed. So that's a really big problem in the industry. And we're also seeing in a lot of our conversations that we have accountants and kind of admin people doing risk management and trying to pull together data from timesheets through to, these quotes and through to claims. They're almost sitting in this role of kind of risk management when they've only been perhaps trained as an accountant or an admin person. Whereas a lot of those strategic kind of decisions need to be made at a project management or a commercial management level. And a lot of the similar principles do actually apply to self-performed work. We're talking about subcontractors because that is a big problem across a lot of us in the industry. But the very similar thing applies to when you're doing direct costs. You're going to buy things at Bunnings. You're trying to track the costs against what you had estimated or budgeted. Same issue, just in a different kind of context. What does that actually mean in terms of our team, our business, the human cost? Basically, all the teams we've been talking to are really starting to drown in the admin. Because they have mobilized these disconnected point solutions, they're now trying to manage each one of those, chasing the subbies for things, entering the info into 3 or 4 different systems, trying to move the data between those different systems. And because you're constantly chasing your tail in data management, there's no forecasting. How can you be planning ahead when all of your information is fragmented? You're just trying to stay above water. And so we're seeing this that resulting in delays in decision making because you don't have visibility. You can't see what's happening really on your project because you're simply just trying to do the admin work necessary to keep the job moving, get the subby on site, get him paid, get him doing what he needs to do. And really, we need to get way more strategic in the construction business. You've probably heard stories amongst your friends, your mates. They've discovered somewhere along the line there's a $120,000 variation, but the project's already been handed over, but it was approved in an email. No one forwarded it to finance. And so there's a lack of integration, a lack of transparency, connectivity. And there's a real fundamental impact to this, right? There's a human impact and also a business impact. As a construction business, we have to make profits in order for the business to thrive and to grow. But if we're having blowouts, we're now starting to lose our margin to the point that some projects are going to cost us. And if we're missing claims, it's a commercial risk. Sometimes we'll have delayed payments, and that starts to get the subbies frustrated. Maybe they're our best subby, and just through some kind of admin headaches, we have now alienated them just because the system wasn't working, because we didn't respond fast enough. And it comes down to trust also. Maybe some of the executives, the general managers in your business, maybe they don't trust some of the project reporting that's coming out. Maybe they feel like every 2 to 3 months, we're going to have to sit down with this whole group and we're going to have to pull all the data together manually. We're going to have to cross-check it because they don't have trust. They don't believe, they can see that the system is too fragmented to work well and smoothly. Same as project managers. Maybe they're doing their own project cost management, maybe in Excel somewhere, but it's not matching the accounting system. And so who's right? Who do you actually trust in that scenario? The subbies start to not trust that they're going to get paid on time. And then when you're going to your client and say, look, here's the variation that we are claiming to you as the developer, as the owner, maybe they start to not trust you because you don't have your things together. You don't have your system sorted out. This is a really important fact to just pause and talk about for a second. Over 2,800 construction companies went into insolvency in the 2023-24 financial year. It's the largest portion of company collapses. And, you know, this statistic, I'm sure that you have experienced it, either amongst your peers, you've heard about it, you've seen businesses starting to downsize, and the construction industry itself is bearing the brunt of a bunch of, you know, obviously companies going into administration, and over 27.7% of those, you know, when they go into voluntary administration, were construction related in a given time period. So it's a real issue. And, you know, it's not something we want to just be all doom and gloom about. But why do construction businesses go under? Because they cannot manage their costs properly, because they have a lack of visibility, a lack of transparency, and things are catching them out. And then another construction business will buy that one out, try and bail it out, inherit the problem, and then we start to see it happen again, right? So that's enough about the problem, right? We all kind of know the problem. What are we going to do about it? And what have we learned? You know, what does good really look like? What if you could track everything from start to finish? Okay. So your business, your construction company, it works with a set of subcontractors. So you need to have a system where the subcontractor is inducted, pre-qualified, their insurance is verified. And then a project begins. You've done your own budgeting and estimating, but that needs to be in the system. The system needs to know what you've budgeted and estimated. And then you start breaking out those scopes, sending them out for tendering. The system needs to track who you're sending that out to, those approved list of subbies. It needs to track the data coming back. And now we're comparing the quotes in the system, and we're picking which one we want to go with. And we are creating the contract or the purchase order for that subbie inside the same system, linked back to the budget, linked back to the company data. And now that's getting tied up. We have a contract. The subbie's getting notified. Hey, mate, your contract has been approved. You've got your PO. Let's get cracking. And the data that they need is being sent out to them. So they've given you, obviously, all their quoting, line items, etc. that have come into the system. And now you're sending out, here's the latest approved drawings. So you've got a unified document management tool system that's all connected. And you're sending out, these are the drawings we're going to build off, you know, and you're keeping that under control. And then we're now in contract mode. The project is running. The subbies are on site. And we're now tracking their work to see if they're really getting the work done that they're saying. And we're tracking that through data that is available, whether that's, you know, their site sign-ons, or whether that's job completion reports or defects, or perhaps something even in 3D files that may give us an indication that that subbie is really active. They have done the work that they're about to claim for. And then the subcontractor themselves, we don't, you know, they have all of their own problems to deal with at a smaller scale, right? So we're going to make it really easy for them to submit their claims. What if they log in to a portal where they, as a subcontractor, have their own view? They can see their orders. They can go, I'm going to raise a new claim. It's a 20% claim against this order. And now that's all integrated back through to the budget, through to the purchase order, and now the claim comes in. Doesn't get approved straight away because your project manager needs to, you know, basically tick it off. But what if the system is helping him decide whether he should approve that claim? It's saying, look, they've had 3 safety incidents in the past few months. They've got a design coordination issue in their 3D files, and their insurance is about to lapse. We really need to sort some of these things out before we go ahead and approve some of these claims. That type of visibility is what is de-risking your project and your business. And then finally, you know, the claim is approved. Essentially, we've committed the money at that point, and we're now into kind of a cash flow forecasting or a real cash system. And we can integrate, perhaps. Maybe your core accounting system in your business is a Xero or a MYOB or something like that, and it's fundamental to your business. And maybe that's an important thing to keep. But this project management ecosystem we just described needs to have a nice, tight link to the real cash situation. And now you've closed the loop. You've closed the loop from project inception, budgeting, through the whole subbie management, and through to finally the cash flow. It's all tracked, all auditable. We're not emailing PDFs. We're not storing things randomly on SharePoint and Dropbox. We're not losing things. We heard one story recently, something simple like site photos, and they were taking them on site on their phone, coming back to the office, downloading them through iTunes, renaming every photo, uploading it through SharePoint. Maybe you're not doing something like that, but these are the types of redundant, repetitive admin activities that we are hearing about across the industry. So let's visualize this workflow a little bit. We can see that what's happening inside of my business is I'm doing my internal estimates. We're going to those pre-qualified subbies. We're sending them the scopes. They're sending us back the quote. We're issuing the contract. We have the claim and the invoice, but in one system, not four, okay? That's the difference. And for your subby, it's quite a big deal for them. They haven't had to go and do their insurances and inductions over in this system, and then you've issued the bidding in this system, so they've got to log into that one, do something over there, and then now you've got like some kind of other finance claims tool that they're now logging into. Like, those guys are busy, and you want them on site. You want them delivering work, not dealing with all these different systems. If you are providing like a really smooth integrated system to those subbies, they're going to love you, and they're going to make their life easier, make your life easier. So it's not going to be a situation where, I've got to check with accounts, I've got to search my email, I've got to get to SharePoint, I've got to look at Dropbox. We're getting out of that. We're getting to the point where we have our finger on the pulse of the project. And this is where we can see a connected workflow, a workflow that is deployed across the business. Everyone knows how things are happening. The system is managing itself. It's checking itself. It's making sure that things are working. And that's really where AI fits in and where things get really interesting. AI, big buzzword, exciting, right? Scary, maybe. It's very good at working with data. AI, someone in a construction business, relatively small, asked me the other day, what's AI? And I said, it's just a system that it guesses the next best word. You ask it something and it'll guess the next best word. It's obviously much more than that. It's basically a very powerful tool for checking for patterns, for summarizing information, for looking for inaccuracies, for generating content and words, pre-filling forms. This is where AI comes in, taking away the work of admin that your team is struggling with across, the entire project at every stage. But, and there's a big but, and that's in red here, you need to have centralized integrated data first, right? If you do not have this, your AI is not going to work for you because it's sitting off to the side and it's just now dealing with the same problem your business is dealing with, 4 or 5 different systems, no connected data ecosystem. It can't answer what it doesn't know about. And so you need an environment where your construction data, your project data is in one place and it's come together. It's in a safe, secure location that is owned by your business, and the AI is connecting into that and working with that. And then it can start to do all these wonderful things that we've talked about. It can scan across your subbies and find out if their insurance is missing, if they've overclaimed something. It can be doing what we call agentic AI, where it is off doing things autonomously based on rules and settings that you've put in. It's finding out, that invoice has been claimed and approved but hasn't been actioned, or this is a variation trend across all of our projects. If we do this particular project type, it's going to be a risk if we do this particular, mode of construction. Those type of trends help you to decide what you're going to do next on your next project and how you're going to do it better. Automating all of the notifications and things that otherwise you as a PM or as a project team is going to get sucked into doing, right? And then it's adding this structure and foresight piece. So it's an advisor to you, but it's helping you to forecast and it's helping you to find the risks with the process because it is integrated and in one place. And the benefits are really some key measurable outcomes, sorry, which results in income. But anyway, so this is really where AI, it's now working. It's telling us about claims. It's spotting the overclaims. It's flagging missing documents. It's this admin team that doesn't sleep. It doesn't forget. It doesn't drink 17 coffees a day. And that's resulting in a reduction in admin time, faster procurement cycles, fewer unresolved variations. We're not approving claims we shouldn't have approved. We have visibility and we have better project margin performance. Like you can see it. You can see why this is the case, right? It's not theory. This is a real result. This is a real outcome that happens when you bring your construction project management together and deploy AI across it. So when you fix a system, the results follow. The business can scale. There's more time for golf. There's more time for fishing, for driving. You may be thinking about how can I possibly sell my construction business if my systems aren't right? Or how can I start to work less? Or how can I bring on more project managers? Because if the system is not there, what do you have really as a business? Your construction business is the system. That's what makes it special. And so when you have this working and when you solve this problem, you'll feel it. You'll feel the human benefits. You'll have PMs who are focused on delivering, on value engineering, on strategizing, not just reconciling bank balances. The commercial teams will have live data. They won't have numbers from 3-4 months ago that have never been updated and never been checked. The executives, general managers, your senior PMs, commercial managers, they're going to have visibility and not surprises, and they'll have trust in the system, right? And if you get this right, Friday afternoon's off. It's time for golf. There's no phone calls after 4:45, and you may just have to remember to take off your hard hat before you walk out onto the tee. So we've talked a lot about the problem. We've talked about conceptually what needs to be fixed, right? And this is not something we've made up. We have had hundreds of conversations across the industry, and it's always reinforcing these same problems and the same solution that's needed. And that's what we've built with Deep Space. And so in Deep Space, you do manage your subcontractors. We have a site app where they do their inductions. They can do their pre-qualification. You can scope out your packages, send them out. You store them all in a common data environment or a document register in the system. It tracks when they're sent, who they're sent to. You can start to see all the live costs in one platform. Helps you flag problems before they really blow up. The AI is there available to search across all this information, act as an advisor, act as an agent. And you don't need to necessarily replace your core accounting system, but just about everything else Deep Space can manage from a project management point of view. On the next slide here, we have a few real slides from our system. And we can see at the top left here, the subbies and contractors that I work with, all managed. The data connections are established. We actually have a trust relationship between us and that subby. We can see our workers and their safety induction status. And then we can go into the cost system where that same data is used to issue quotes, receive purchase and issue contracts and purchase orders. They can log into the subcontractor portal. They can do their claims. The claims go through an approval system. Only the PMs can sign it off, but the PM has access to this entire picture of where the project is at. He's able to get real insight, which helps him to decide, should I approve this claim or not? So the AI is helping, the AI is assisting. And we can see here the actions engine as well. We basically have a system for tracking all of these tasks, can be automated, but basically as a project begins, these are the things we're going to do to set up the project. This is what the PM needs to do. This is what accounts need to do. This is what the perhaps site supervisor needs to do. As a team, it's not ad hoc anymore. It's systematized or systemized, whichever one's the right word. And so then you have the system and it's integrated, and this is the real way that things are working in Deep Space. Real project example, large-ish project, very large steel construction project. And basically between kind of the design bidding stage and the full construction stage, it was uncovered that there's a $15 million variation just in the steel supply. Deep Space helped to dig into that, get the evidence behind it. That formed part of the variation claim back to the client. Client paid it because it was all tracked. You know, they had trust in the system and the data that was captured there. We've used Deep Space to detect overclaim patterns because we have direct access and insight into estimates and also into like the model data, into drawings. And so we can start to see this guy's claimed, you know, for 2,000 square meters of flooring, but really, you know, the 3D files only say there's 1,000. How is this happening? So we can close out some of those risks really, really quick and easily. And ultimately, fewer admin staff. On another project, the client calculated that Deep Space would save 7 full-time staff over the life of the project because so much was getting automated through the system. So it's already real, it works, it's happening. And we've just talked literally about one piece of Deep Space today, which is this subcontractor cost and kind of claims management, right? Chaos to control. But we apply that across all parts of this project management system, and it fits into the pattern of how Deep Space has been built and Deep Space works. Integrating data, managing workflows, automating checking, finding inconsistencies, giving us dashboarding around and around across the whole business. So let's wrap it up. We kind of all accept, I think, that we can do better, right? That's why we're all sitting here today, because we know there's problems and we know that it can be better and it can be improved. And you're sitting in your seat wondering, what can I do? But really, this is the first step, right? Is awareness. It's like saying, okay, yes, the business is running, but yes, we can do better. Okay. So that's recognizing that you have an element of chaos, and that's okay. The next step is then how we're going to get towards this control. You know, we want to switch from being reactive to proactive. We want to switch from chasing data to really using data. We should already have the data. We want to utilize it properly. We're going to switch from doing rework and abortive work to real time. You're heading the project in the right direction. We're going to switch from please fix this, or how do I, someone please help, to we've got this. System is working. It's okay. We have control here. So if that hits home for you, next steps is, you know, we have a chat. In Deep Space, we spend quite a lot of time digging in and understanding your business and just picking those key things where we can see the chaos and where we can establish the control, and the cost is usually one of the first ones that we deploy. And really, just thanks for joining today. Happy for you guys to chuck any questions in Q&A now. We can stay on together and have a bit of a chat. Obviously, it's been recorded, but here's to more control, less chaos, maybe a little bit more time on the golf course as well. Thanks for joining.
Thanks very much, Luke. I'll throw one question at you, which Michael's put in the Q&A section, and I do encourage anyone else who's on the meeting just to chuck your questions in there. Question for you, Luke. How long does it take to implement? Are we talking weeks or months?
We have a structured approach. And so we don't come into the business and go, we're going to chuck everything out overnight, because that's too risky. What we really do is sit and do essentially workflow mapping. And we go, this is how you're currently doing this thing. And that's the thing that's costing you a lot of time. And that's the thing we're going to deploy first. And then we'll give you back an implementation time frame. And it just depends on your business. Some are more accelerated because they're kind of closer to where they want to be. And some, perhaps, you know, based on the team makeup and things, we'll make sure that we put the training in and make sure that the whole team is comfortable with each of those as we deploy them. So, you know, estimated probably from the time we're first talking to you to the time that you implemented, probably realistically is like a 4 to 6 week time frame around consultation and getting the system mobilized.
Awesome. Thanks, Luke. Another question in from Stuart here. What accounting or ERPs do you integrate with?
Yeah, so zero integration is the key one that we've worked on. We do have open APIs. And so we have API integration really possible into any system, and we have an integration team on our side. So again, this is usually happening in implementation. Someone will say, oh, we're using this accounting tool, and then we will basically build out the integration. Everything these days is an open API system. Advantage we have is because we've already conceptualized where data should sit and how it should sync and how it should look. It's really just a connector. We know that, let's say you've got Xero and you've got your list of companies and they're approved. Let's grab that and we'll synchronize it to DeepSpace. And here's your list of approved companies that you then use through the project management flow.
Lovely. Thanks, Luke. Another question here. Could you show a test or example case user interface showing how it actually works and what people see as they use it? And also, could you clarify specifically which features go beyond existing PM systems and how this is displayed or used? I'd also suggest for whoever submitted that question, there's a QR code on the screen at the moment. You can scan that to set up another meeting with Luke and be able to walk that through. But I'll hand that to you, Luke.
Yeah, I think that's the best bet for in terms of showing it on the screen. We'll do it together and talk it through. But basically, the second part to that question was interesting, which is why do we think we're different, perhaps to other project management solutions? And there's a few things. Obviously, we're Australian made, we're data and AI native, and we come from a very strong background of working with very large construction projects, but we've now productivized into something that works for a mid-sized construction business. And so there's, to be honest, not that many competitors in the space that covers all of these pieces, particularly at the price point that DeepSpace does. And obviously all this comes back to having lean teams, new ways of coding that's faster. We don't have 20 or 30-year-old tech debt to deal with. And so we're extremely rapid in terms of development. And we're also proud of the fact that we spend time with our customers. Our co-founder has literally spent a number of days this week delivering donuts across Melbourne and Sydney. You're not going to see that from a lot of other project management companies, particularly American or globally. And so that's really exciting for us in this stage of the business, is to be able to be so close to people and solving their problems.
Another question here from David. Does it include a messaging or email tool, or does it just pick up on those?
Yeah, so it has email tool in the sense that all the automatic notifications and things send out via email. It also has a logging system where emails can come inbound to DeepSpace, and it will index them, and it will also store the attachments for you, and then you can create or essentially build out a workflow on top of that. You could create a task on the top of that. Perhaps the email comes in and it is a claim, pops into the draft claims area, and it's all captured there. So what we have deliberately not done is done something along the lines of saying you must use DeepSpace for all correspondence, because in that mid-sized construction, things are not quite that way, right? You're going to have emails, and you're going to have people sending WhatsApp, and you're going to have different things happening. Important thing is to make it easy to get that into the system and track it and audit it. And so it's a simple, send your email to DeepSpace, and it gets captured in and stored against the project, and it becomes part of the audit trail that way.
Great, thanks, Luke. Look, if we don't have any more questions, I think we can probably wrap it up there. Thank you to everyone who's joined today. As Luke mentioned, this has been recorded, so we will be sharing this. And please do set up a meeting with Luke. You can find his details on the website or by scanning that QR code. Big thank you again to everyone. And yeah, we will talk to you soon.